been a great conference, and I hope this presentation that I give will supplement that great conference and you'll enjoy what we've got to say. It's a reasonably easy story to understand. There are, of course, challenges and opportunities that I'll go through, but in reality, it is an opportunity now as an investment to come into Bradda Head at probably its lowest price it's ever going to get to. And it's got there because the lithium market in general is in actual fact in the doldrums. But let me not mess around, let me get to it because it is late in the afternoon, and let's take you through Bradda Head Lithium. There's the usual disclaimer about forward-looking statements, as though someone like me would tell you porky pies. Of course I'm going to tell you the honest truth. Every single word of it you can believe or choose not to believe, that choice is yours. But there are disclaimers in there. Here we are, we're in the USA, and that's an important starting point. The USA, of all the countries in the world, is determined to have its own lithium production. And right now, there is none in the USA. It's happy to trade with its neighbour Canada, and it's happy to trade really with anyone else in the world, with perhaps the exception of China. But deep down, it wants its own lithium. And we are placed in the USA to make sure they have that opportunity from this little company known as Bradda Head Lithium. So we believe we're in the right place. And of course, America needs no introduction. It's like saying you're building something here in the UK. One thing that Western Europe and America have in common is infrastructure. There is no shortage of it. A lot of my colleagues in the lithium business work throughout many parts of the world. In Africa, for example, where no matter what they tell you, there is no infrastructure. Some of them work in Canada, and parts of Canada can hit -40. The USA and Arizona and Nevada does not get anywhere near that temperature. So it's the right place, and we're in the right location. We've got a good bunch of people that you'll hear about in a minute or two. You'll hear about in a minute or two that will have the credentials, I think, to take this company forward. And we believe the lithium market space has now reached its bottom, is beginning to turn in an upward part of the cycle. And if that's the case, then that's why we say we're in the right place at the right time. And we are well aware of working in the USA. Do not think it's a walk in the park. It isn't. There's many permitting issues. There's challenges, if you like, with local communities. But again, we've built a team to make sure those resources are in place and we can deal with the typical issues that will come up whether we like it or not. That's the team. You can see by comparison, I'm an exceptionally young Turk in terms of running the business. You know, just been a stripling of a lad. But you can see who's on board. I've got a colleague sitting in front of me here called Denamek. He's our financial director. And of course, we have the redoubtable Mr. Mellon on the board as well. But we have a good team of people, and very importantly is the Chief Operating Officer and the advisors. Because remember, whether it's the USA, whether it's Scotland, or whether it's Africa, you have to understand the culture. And each place has its own culture and does things in its own ways. So we have brought in Adam in particular, who is a USA-based consultant, who's there to help us with making sure our message is properly taken on board, both within the communities, but importantly, more importantly these days than before, the government of America. So that picture you see in front of you now, that slide, in terms of where we are in America, you can see we've got a spread from east to west. And it's interesting, from a little company like Bradda Head, we cover all lithium mineralization styles. And that's what most people have come to the booth to ask about, because they wanted to complete their treasure hunt. So the answer was, we have all lithium mineralization styles. We've got lithium in brines, oil brines, over in Pennsylvania and in Texas. We've got lithium in hard rock, which is the San Domingo project, and we've got lithium in clay. So we've got the spread that reduces the geological risk and the processing risk going forward. So we will be a supplier of lithium, I believe, to the American marketplace. We start, if you like, there with where we are in terms of the basin and the western USA. We're in Arizona. One of the things we have to be cognizant of is the fact that Arizona is a dry state. I don't mean dry that they don't have alcohol. I'm delighted to say that they do have a beer or two, but it is a state that's short of water. So we have to be very, very careful in how we manage and husband our efforts to ensure that water is not overused. And I'll come to a portion of this presentation where you'll see where there's an opportunity for us to do that in particular. I'm going to start with what we call San Domingo. San Domingo is an area where we have our pegmatites. Now, the three lithium mineralizations I mentioned to you are clays, pegmatites, and brine. The most traditional of all of them are the pegmatites. Another word for it would be hard rocks. That's where you find the spodumene, and that's the bulk of the supply in the world today, coming mainly from Australia and from one or two other smaller countries. But Australia supplies an intermediate product, and I would ask you to try and keep that in mind. An intermediate product means it's a concentrate. It is not the finished article. It has to go to, in Australia's case, China, to become lithium carbonate, which is battery specification and used for the batteries for electric vehicles. Here, as they do in Australia, we would produce an intermediate product, and the reason I'm hounding that fact is that the capital cost of building a small concentrator in a place like Bradda Head has in San Domingo is something that a small company like Bradda Head can actually do. If I talk about some of the other projects, you're talking about billions of dollars of capital, and juniors just do not have that ability to raise that kind of money. But here, the concentrator we could build. And we were so excited. We've done 2 drilling campaigns. We've done a drilling campaign in terms of drilling a year or so ago. Second one was followed up about 6 months ago, and we had some spectacular intersections. You can see there on that slide, we've got over 30 meters of 1.6%. That was the 6th best intersection in the world throughout 2023. So although you can hear of all the successes in Australia and in Canada, etc., and in Brazil, where they're really hitting it hot at the moment, little America does have its own opportunities. Now, we've got to find more of it, and we're busy on that. We, in fact, are encouraged sufficiently that on this slide you can see that we've picked up a lot of extra ground so that we now own the entire district, to make sure that there's no little eavesdroppers, no nasty neighbours that come in to annoy us. So we have the entire property. And as we move forward, and I'll talk a little bit again about what we call the Basin Project, I'll refer back to the money that we're going to get from that project that will impact in this one, because we believe we should be undertaking another drilling programme. We've got indication of resources, and there's 3 areas in particular where we have them. One is here that you can see, which is the, if I remember correctly, that is the midnight owl slide, and you can see we've got an outline ore body there. We want to grow that. We have a slide there in Morning Star, which is bigger and thicker. We have resources there. We want to grow that. And then we have one which is not on a slide, which is the central region. If we can get to a decent little size, which I think is achievable by certainly the last quarter of this year, then what's important to note is that we can actually get, from our metallurgical results, a concentrate by simple crushing and gravity steps. Now, for those of you who are not familiar, crushing really means an aggregate plant. And aggregate plants are used in almost every individual situation you can imagine, whether it's for building houses or building roads. So they're not hard to find, and you can rent them. You don't actually have to buy it. And the nice thing about crushing rock is there's no fundamental chemical change. And if there's no fundamental chemical change, there's no need for permitting in excess. The second part of the work that we did showed us that we could get a 6% lithium concentrate. That is sellable in the market. Even today, as the prices started to tick up, it went as low as $800, $840 a tonne. Now it's selling at about $1050. 9 months ago, it was selling at $8,000. So you can see the swing that it's had. But we can produce an intermediate concentrate product based on the work that we've done, we believe, for somewhere around $400 to $500. So even in the worst of cases, we're in a position where we can generate a nice little cash flow. This isn't going to be the world's biggest lithium mine, but it's going to be an economic lithium mine, and that's probably which is more important. So I'll come back to that in just a minute, because when I move on to this particular one, which is the clays, the lithium in clays, we already have what we call a 43101 resource. What that really means, and for those of you who don't know, is that the various governments throughout the world have put forward certain rules that defines how you calculate how much material you've got in the ground, whether it's lithium or gold or copper, and they call that instrument 43101. And it's to give investors a level of confidence that the charlatans that pitch up to some shows like this worldwide and can talk about all sorts of things until the cows come home are being measured and are being checked. So knowing that we've got a 43101 resource is a big step forward. I mean, I'm just thinking out loud here. I mean, I trust you know the Mark Twain quote, when he said, if you find somebody in America standing above a hole in the ground, what do you call them? and it's not minor, you call him a liar, because he's probably making it up as he goes along. So you have 43101 there to guide you, and we've got one, and we've now started drilling. We just announced it at the end of last week, and we'll probably say a little bit more about it in the incoming week, but we've started drilling there, and we expect by the end of April, if not slightly before that, to have a total resource of 2.5 million tonnes of lithium carbonate equivalent in the ground. That is a strategic size of deposit. There are 2 or 3 others in America who've got similar sizes, and one of them, called Thacker Pass, is building a project as we speak. The American government, I mentioned to you about our interaction with the American government through the kindness of Mr. Biden and his Democrats sitting in the Senate, have given Thacker Pass over $1 billion of USA money. Not alone, have given them over $1 billion. So we're very keen also to get into the opportunity of taking some money off Uncle Sam as well, and starting some of our own work. So we have to move things forward. But the reason I wanted to bring this story up is because in the troubled times when the lithium market was really in the pan, quite frankly, and that was right throughout almost 2023, one of the things we did was make sure that we cut back on what we would regard as superfluous costs. You know, all of us enjoy traveling to conferences, all of us like the business class airfare, all of us like the bells and whistles that goes together. But as you can tell from my accent, I come from that part of the world where those kind of niceties sometimes can be missed. So we cut right back on what we call the overhead costs until there's only 4 of us. But because of the 4 of us, the efficiency has improved. So there's been no detriment to the operation of the corporate body itself. And we've got some excellent guys that I mentioned earlier who are more than capable of running this. But having streamlined that cost, it means more money goes into the ground. And I've brought that up in the context of what we're doing in basin here. When we complete that 2.5 million tonnes of lithium carbonate equivalent, which I believe will be by the end of April, and I'm hoping to beat that obviously, what happens is that there's a certain royalty company that we negotiated with about 2+ years ago, will give us a further $3 million, US, not Canadian, $3 million. That means that this little company does not have to go out and raise any cash in the short term. So we're optimistic that from cutting back on overhead and the $3 million coming in, that we will be well set for the remainder of this year. And we hope that the lithium price will obviously reflect that upturn we're seeing now, and that moves us along quite positively. The pegmatites I mentioned, we hope to be in operation, and we're going to try and push as hard as we can to start making that lithium concentrate I mentioned at sort of $400 or $500 a tonne. We hope to be there by the end of 2025. And by then, the demand from lithium should be back. The electric vehicles should be getting sold in quantity. The nonsense we've seen in the marketplace with destocking, etc., should have gone. So we'll be well placed. So we've got the basin project moving forward. We've got the pegmatites moving forward. What else do we have? Well, what we've got, and I'm just going to move a few, is we have what is called lithium in brines. And the reason I wanted to take some time on this one is recently some of the big American oil companies, in particular Exxon and Chevron, have been highlighting that some of the old mined out oil fields and gas fields in Texas and Arizona and in Arkansas, etc., have in fact been refilled with brine that contains lithium. And some of the grades are quite spectacular. In Exxon, we went to, just to pass it on to you, we went to a conference about just over 2 weeks ago now, and Exxon, being a big oil company, said, guys, we are going to make enough lithium, because why wouldn't they say it, to satisfy America's needs. And sitting here next to me in this right-hand pocket, there is $10 billion to unlock the potential of the oil brines. And if you look at this particular slide, you'll see a sort of blue snaky outline. That is what they call the Smackover Formation, which is where these lithium brines have started to accumulate. And right in the middle of it, that red star, is Bradda Head. So in the words of Mr. Alex Ferguson, we are one of these noisy neighbours that's going to annoy Exxon and Chevron, and I would expect to see some attention from them. But over and above Texas, we also have Pennsylvania. And in Pennsylvania, we've got a bigger footprint, and that footprint is enough for us to move with aggression now and start to make something happen in the oil brines. And because of the Exxon interest and because of the Chevron interest, people also are now getting interested in this technology. And there is an existing company that has got what they call direct lithium extraction up and running in Arkansas, very close to where we are, and we can use that technology as we go forward. Sometimes it pays to be the second taxi off the rank. The first guy has to go through a lot of pain and struggle to bed things down, so it's quite handy sometimes, as I say, being maybe not first, but a close second. So we've got the oil brines, we've got the pegmatites. I mentioned the money coming in. I should have said that because of that money coming in, we're going to drill back at the pegmatites, we're going to build that resource up, and therefore that potential to get into operation of 2025 makes sense. We're talking to the DOE, Department of Energy in the USA, and I imagine, like every government I've ever come across, there is a plethora of paperwork we've got to fill in, but we're grinding our way through that so that we can access capital, because what's important for a little junior in this world is not to dilute. We have to dilute at some stage, but not at these levels. So we're well funded, 3 good projects, access to 3 million coming in. There's still $1.5 million in the treasury right now as I speak, and there is the opportunity of introducing ourselves with more vigor to the DOE and getting more money in as a consequence of that. We've got 2 other brines. They're called the traditional brines, where you would have, similar to Argentina, Chile, those kind of places, and also in America. There is an existing mine called Silver Peaks, which is run by the international company called Albemarle, and we are adjacent to that. We have identified that the brines themselves have a perched water table, so there's indication there's lithium there, but in terms of priority, it's not our number 1, nor our number 2, and probably not our number 3. But it's there, and as people get more excited about lithium, then there's an opportunity for joint venture and getting a little bit extra bang for a buck from that side of things. So in summary, and you'll be glad to know I've got to the end of this presentation. Well, before we get there, ESG. ESG is part and parcel of our upbringing. We understand that you must do the right things at the right time, and where you can, do the right things before it comes the right time. And so we're very much engaged with the local communities, both Native American and the white farmers, etc., the people who've immigrated there. And so we work very hard. We have a separate web page, one deliberately for the USA and one for the international market, which is where we are just now in AIM. We are AIM listed, we are TSX listed, so we have access to the North American capital, which I think was important when we see ourselves as a North American company. So in summary, what can I tell you? I can tell you that it's the right time to invest in Bradda Head. Our share price has been depressed. I think that time is come and gone. Some of the share movements that we've seen recently, every time we put a press release out, we get big volumes. That has meant some of the guys who perhaps have lost faith in the lithium market space have gone. And I can tell you that the insiders have been buying shares because we believe, and we continue to believe. So we're ready for this third wave. I've got the company, I believe, ready to kickstart it when we get more excitement in the lithium market. We've got enough money, we've got the right team of people, and with America there, it wants its own lithium. So we're ready to go. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.